So hi everybody. I'm Olli Loukola, and I'm working at the University of Oulu here in northern Finland. Greetings from almost from Lapland, not quite. Today I will talk about complex cognition of bumblebees, and I will present a couple of new studies that I have been working with. The cooperation study and also ongoing project about insight in bumblebees. And let's start with this figure or image, and this represents how we as humans often perceive different species in terms of intelligence. At the base or bottom of this pyramid, we see invertebrates, including bees, while vertebrates are placed above them, with humans, of course, at very top of this pyramid. And this image kind of reflects a common perspective that intelligence is somehow linked to biological complexity, particularly the presence of a backbone and, a large brain, basically. But is this the best way to think about intelligence in the animal kingdom? Of course, there are clear reasons why humans are considered like superior in intelligence. When we compare the brain size or the number of neurons, for example, of invertebrates, such as bees, they cannot compete with us. But does this really mean that the cognitive abilities are lower level in invertebrates? Okay, let's take a closer look what bumblebees especially can actually do. Okay, so this is the cooperation study that we published last spring. And in this experiment, we wanted to know whether bumblebees can learn to cooperate with their partner, even though in the wild, bumblebees don't really do cooperation while they're foraging. And this Duguid and Melis from US, they introduced new framework for categorizing collaborative behavior. And they categorized collaboration in 4 different categories. And the first category is byproduct collaboration, which is unintentional joint actions from individual actions or external stimuli, which means that if animals don't understand anything about collaboration, they might still look like they're collaborating with some other individuals. If, for example, bees are trying to get the reward from one flower, other bees are coming to the same flower and they are doing something together, it might seem that they're actually doing collaboration even though they are not doing collaboration. And then we have the second category, socially influenced cooperation, where these joint actions of 2 individuals are influenced by others, but it still lacks intentional coordination. So it might be that 2 individuals are kind of socially influencing each other, but they don't really understand the meaning of the partner in this cooperation. And then we have this third category, which is actively coordinated collaboration, which is intentional coordination to achieve shared goals. And we know that chimpanzees are able to do this, and orangutans, capuchins, dolphins, hyenas, wolves, elephants, and kias. And these all are considered as smart vertebrates. And then we have this last 4th category, which is collaboration based on shared intentionality, which is joint action supported by cognitive skills and motivation to share goals. And this is hallmark of human cooperation. No other animals can actually at least have shown this kind of a collaboration based on shared intentionality. And when we're talking about animal cooperation, how to study that, most of the studies in comparative cognition, which is the field in cognitive sciences where we compare different species, how different species have evolved what comes to their cognitive abilities. And they almost all have used this kind of either the cooperative pulling paradigm by Meredith Crawford or some sort of modification of this paradigm. In this original one, they use a tandem string pulling where 2 individuals needed to pull the same string in order to get the reward together. And hypotheses and study questions in this study were, while cooperation is common in social insects, little is known about the cognitive mechanisms underlying insect cooperation. So for example, in bumblebees, we know that almost everything that happens in the nest it's based on collaboration. The queen is laying the eggs and the workers are taking care of their sisters and brothers that are developing as a larva. But when they go out to forage, they don't really do cooperation there. So we wanted to ask whether any insect can understand its partner's role in cooperative tasks, or is cooperation merely a byproduct of individual action, basically the first level in that category, like 4 categories that I just explained. So we used bumblebees, Bombus terrestris, as a study model, and we explored their behavior in 2 different cooperative foraging tasks to address these questions. And if cooperation is kind of the first level category, the byproduct, individual behavior should remain consistent between the training and the delay test. And I will explain later like what this delay test meant or means. And then if socially influenced, we expect differences between the treatments and between the training and the delay test. And actively coordinated collaboration would entail flexible responses to partners' locations and activity. So if there's any indication that bumblebees are able to active coordination, then we should see these kind of indicators of bees taking attention what the other individual is doing, and that should kind of cause some responses to the partner bee. So in this first experiment that we call block pushing experiment, we first started training individual bees so that like we first trained them to associate blue color with reward, with sugar solution reward. So basically meant that we had like a flight arena in the lab, and then we let one bee into the arena, and the bee found blue flowers at the floor of this arena. And this is quite straightforward and simple thing to do. Bees learn this like in a minute. And then gradually we started putting like a small Lego blocks like next to this blue flower, artificial flower, so that the bee kind of got used to that yeah, there is this Lego block next to the flower. And then step by step, we started pushing the Lego block on top of this flower, so that in this 4th stage, the bee couldn't find the sucrose solution anymore, but they needed to push the Lego block away from the flower. And this, of course, we had like several treatment groups. So in single controls, we started already with the bigger Lego block. So one individual bee was pushing like a bigger Lego block. And of course, that is impossible without any help, because one big Lego block is too heavy for one bee to push. So we hid like a small magnet inside the block and used the other magnet underneath the floor, so that whenever this bee kind of tried to push this block, we moved the magnet, and the bee was managing moving into that block. And then in this real training, in this partnered bees group, we added also the larger block now covering the flower, but also another bee. So 2 bees were pushing this larger block together in order to find the sucrose solution. And single controls were, the bees were continuing the same training alone with the larger block. And then after this training period, we ran one delay test where the partner bees presence into that arena was delayed. So we let one bee into the arena, and waited until the bee landed next to the block, and then we released the other bee. And we were observing like what this bee that was released first, whether they start pushing immediately or whether they wait until the partner arrives and then they start pushing. And here we can see a video where one bee is in this pre-training phase and pushing a small Lego block. As you can see, the bee is using their legs, but also their head and proboscis to push this block. And yeah, this is slow motion video, and it seems like it's very easy for the bee, but actually the small Lego block is quite heavy for the bee, so it's about the same thing that we are pushing like a small car. So you can imagine how powerful these bumblebees are. And then if we check the results from this block pushing experiment, on the left, on the y-axis, we can see the time to first attempted push in seconds, like how long it took for the bee or bees when they started pushing first time. So single controls, they didn't wait for their partner because they weren't trained to do that. So they started pushing the block immediately when they landed next to the block. But in the partnered group, the first released partnered bee, after landing next to the block, they waited more than 40 seconds before they started pushing the block. And the second released partnered bees in the delay test, when they landed next to the block and they found their partner there, they started pushing that immediately. So this is quite clear result that the bees in the partnered group, they really waited for their partner before they started pushing the block. And if we compare to other species, for example, dolphins and chimpanzees or elephants, they might wait like a couple of seconds before they start doing whatever they're doing in the delay test. So this is quite remarkable that bees with their small brains are actually they have more patience to wait for their partner. In addition to the waiting time, here in the second figure we can see the proportion of times when the second released bee pushed first. And we can see that in single controls, the secondly released bee almost like they didn't actually push first, maybe one time, as we can see from the figure. But in the partner group, the secondly released bee was actually pushing like almost 40% of the times, which means that the first released bees, they were really waiting for their partner. And from the third picture, we can see that the proportion of times when first released bees first push occurred when second released bee was present. It's quite clear that, yes, in single consoles, they never like started pushing the block only if the partner was there. But in the partnered group, like almost 60% of the times, the bee actually started pushing only when the partner bee was there next to them. And then we run another experiment, which was called tunnel running experiments. And we conducted this experiment because after the block pushing study, we started thinking like, is this enough to show that there's actually active coordination going on there? Or is it just the social influenced cooperation? So in this tunnel running experiment, two bees were waiting first in this antechamber. Like we had like a plastic tunnel, like transparent tunnel where there were like a wall between the two tunnels. So each bee had like their own tunnel, but they could see the other bee on the other side of the wall. And then at the other end of this tunnel, the bees found a white door, and then behind that door there were like two yellow flowers at the floor. So the bees, they kind of first were trained to find that yellow flower, so that the bees knew that, okay, if I'm walking to the other side, other end of the tunnel, they will find the sugar solution reward. So here in the partnered bees group, the 2 bees were released at the same time, and they got reward only if they touched the door at the same time. So we opened the door only after that. And in single controls group, just 1 bee was walking in the tunnel, and they got reward whenever they touched the door at the other end. And in the delay test, same thing that in the block pushing test, first bee was released in the tunnel, and whenever this bee reached to the other end of the tunnel, then the second bee was released. And we measured the times, like how long it took them to touch the door at the other end of the tunnel. And from this figure, we can see that in training, when we were training either the partnered bees or single controls, it took them about 5.5 seconds to walk to the other end of the tunnel and touch the door. But in the delay test, the partnered bees, it took more than 6 seconds from the first bee. So they kind of slowed their speed in walking because they probably were waiting for their partner. But in the single control bees, they were even faster in the delay test. And this is the time to reach the reward door in seconds. So if we are comparing the first released bees, the paired bees, so this is in the delay test. So then in the paired bees, the first released bee, it took like a little bit more than 6 seconds, and in the single controls, it took them only a little bit more than 5 seconds. And then second released bees were much faster because they didn't need to wait for their partner because the partner was already at the door. And then we also observed something interesting from the video analysis. And from this, we can see the proportion of instances where the bumblebee was actually facing towards the other bee at the door. So in this video, we can see this behavior. So these are partnered bees. And as you can see, they're always watching towards the other bee at the door. While the single controls that were walking there alone, they never watched towards the other side of the tunnel. They were always watching towards the flower behind the door. So this was quite clear difference between the partnered bees and the single controls. And then other interesting interaction that we found from the videos was that the proportion, like this figure is showing the proportion of turns which occurred next to the partner bee. So we realized, noticed that sometimes or quite often when the first released bee was released, they stopped somewhere in the tunnel and then turned back to the starting point. And then we were measuring like where exactly the bee was turning back towards the door. And we realized that many times the bees were actually turning back to the door when they faced their partner in the tunnel. So this wasn't just random turnings, but the turning was more likely to happen at the same part of the tunnel where the partner bee was coming towards them. So this kind of indicates the active coordination. So the summary of this cooperation study, we definitely find evidence that bumblebees are able to socially influence cooperation. So they delayed their actions when their partner was late, and they also turned towards the other bee at the door in the tunnel. And we also found some evidence about the active coordination, because the turning behavior in the tunnel, it's impossible to explain it by using any other explanations. So basically, this is the first time ever that invertebrates are shown to do this active coordination in cooperative tasks. And to conclude, bumblebees may exhibit more complex social behaviors than previously understood. And yeah, it means that even though bumblebees don't need to collaborate when they're foraging, but they're still able to learn that if they need to. So they have this ability, they have this behavioral flexibility to do this kind of cognitive tasks if needed. And in the future, we would like to explore more about the mechanisms behind these cooperative behaviors, and then draw broader implications for social insects in general, like testing maybe other species like honeybees or other bumblebee species. And then, of course, it would be interesting to compare those with solitary bees, for example, to see whether the sociality is kind of driving this kind of cognitive behaviors in the cooperative tasks. And this paper was published in Proceedings B last spring. You can find the whole story from this publication. And then after we published this paper, and I realized like we didn't really analyze the training trials that we collected. We were only focusing on the delay tests in this block pushing study or block pushing experiments. And I started digging those videos again and doing some analysis, and we found something super interesting from the videos, that bumblebee pairs were actually doing this kind of guidance, directed guidance, where if the other bee was like a little bit lost in the training and didn't know what to do, the other bee was starting kind of pushing the other bee towards the block. And then we also found this kind of circle dance behavior. I have observed this earlier in the earlier studies as well, but this has never been kind of documented before. So in the circle dance, like two bees are facing each other, so their antennas are touching each other, and then they're like circling. Like several times circling. They might change the direction. It's almost like some sort of primitive form of waggle dance. Like bumblebees don't have waggle dance, this symbolic language, but in this circle dance, it almost seems that they are like communicating with each other. And here I have a couple of poor quality videos. Unfortunately, these are not better quality, but in here we can see this kind of guiding behavior where the other bee is a little bit lost and walking the wrong direction, and then the other bee is kind of guiding the direction of the bee that is lost. So for example, here the purpose was to kind of go towards the block together, and the other bee was like walking to the wrong direction. And these videos are from the same bee pair. We found the same behavior from several pairs, like 4 or 5 different pairs and from different colonies. So this is not just like colony specific or pair specific behavior, but this happened like several times in several bee pairs. And as you can see, the guiding individual is all, like very excited and flapping their wings, and it seems that she's really kind of trying to push the other bee towards the block. And here we can see the circle dance behavior. Unfortunately, only a couple of very short videos where this happened. So I'm currently writing a paper about this. I try to kind of describe this behavior, because this has never been documented before. And back in the times when I was still working in Chitka's lab, I was observing bees like several hours per day, and I observed this behavior, but I didn't know that this is something new. I thought that, yeah, bumblebee researchers must know this. But I guess, yeah, I'm pretty sure that people have seen this behavior before, but because it's not happening that often, and so it's just like somehow went unnoticed. There. Okay. Next, I will talk about the ball rolling bees, and I will let Jane Goodall to do the introduction to this study.
The most recent example which blows people's minds is the bumblebee. And the bumblebee has been taught to roll a little ball. He rolls it backwards, rolls the little ball until he can push it down, or maybe she, I don't know, into a hole, like a goal. And as soon as this little ball gets into the goal, the bumblebee is given a little drop of nectar as a reward. So they learn to do this. But the mind-blowing thing is other bumblebees who've merely watched a taught bumblebee can do the same without being taught, just by watching. And that is supposed to be a mark of very superior intelligence. So this is something we're learning all the time. We have been far too arrogant. The animal kingdom of which we are a part is filled with secrets. And gosh, I'd love to be young and learning about these things now, because all the doors are wide open and you never know what you're going to find.
Thank you, Jane. Yes. So in this ball rolling study, we actually, the goal was to kind of test whether bumblebees can be trained to use this ball as a tool in a way, in order to get the reward from the goal on this platform. So BD needed to roll this ball to the central area in order to activate the kind of goal. As you can see, like when the ball was rolled in the central area, I just pressed the button outside the arena, and then this mini servo door was opening, and the bee was getting access to the sugar solution reward underneath the platform. And in that experiment, we also wanted to test whether bees can learn this ball rolling by observing other individuals. And at the bottom, we can see like the trained bee moving the ball to the goal, and then the observer bee following the demonstrator, and then they're getting the reward together. And we repeated this 3 times in a row. And after that, we tested the bees in the test where all these 3 balls were available, and the observer bee actually didn't select the same ball than the demonstrator was using, but they selected the easier or the easiest option, the ball closest to the goal. And that was the first evidence that insects can actually emulate doing something better based on what they observed someone else doing. And this is this was published in Science, and you can read the whole story by Googling this title or bees rolling balls. But unfortunately, this is behind the paywall, so this is not free. But if you're interested, I can send you the PDF if you just email me, olli.loukola@oulu.fi. And after this experiment, we did another ball rolling experiment. We wanted to ask even more complex rules in this ball rolling task. And now we use different colored balls on different colored platforms. So for example, here in the training, we use like two colored platforms and two balls. And in the test phase, we added the third color, yellow in this case, and a third ball. And we wanted to test whether bees can generalize the rule that it's the color of the platform that tells them like which ball is the rewarding one. So bees could solve the task, but not in all color combinations in the training. So there must be something wrong, not wrong, but like weird going on in their mind when they're trained with, you know, yellow and orange. And then when we were testing them with the blue, bees didn't want to land on the blue platform. But when we were training them with blue and yellow, no problem at all. And then tested with orange, like at least half of the bees solved the task. And when we were training them with blue and orange and tested them with the yellow color as a novel color, all the bees solved the task. So it means that the training history has like very, very kind of strong effects on the performance in the test phase. So we don't know like why this happened, but maybe something to do with neophobia. If you train the bees with, you know, yellow and orange are about the same side in their visual field in the color spectrum. And then if we change the test color to the blue, and blue is on the other side of this color field in their spectrum. So it means that, or it might be that like they see then the blue color as so novel that they're like unable to do anything. But that's weird. I don't know if honeybees are doing the same, but like at least bumblebees seem to do this. And this was published in iScience. So you can read this. This is open access, so you can read the whole story by Googling prior associations affect bumblebees generalization performance in a tool selection task. And then I'm going to talk about the ongoing project that I find super interesting. So we are testing whether bees are able to solve problems by using their insights. Like this has been, the insight has been considered as like a hallmark of humans only. And of course, it's easy to use humans as a study objects because we can communicate with each other and we can interview the study objects after they have this insightful problem solving aha moment or heureka moment. And what this eureka moment or insight means, it means it appears suddenly accompanied by distinctive subjective experience of surprise and delight. So of course it's really difficult to ask bumblebees like whether you experience this surprise and delight or any other animal. And some other definitions are that it appears after an impasse, so after like mistakes, like trial and error, after the period of unsuccessful attempts rather than gradually by trial and error. So even though I mentioned trial and error, of course, normally it's like if animals are trying different things and then suddenly having this, aha, now I know how to solve this task. Yeah, another definition, it involves restructuring the problem, that is approaching it in a new way. And immediate solutions are not typically insightful because a problem solved immediately is not really a problem for the subject. And the earlier evidence from the animals rather than humans are from elephants and great apes and birds. And these animals in these studies, they always are long-term residents in captivity, like zoo animals, for example, or like captivity anyways. And because they are like adult individuals normally, they have been trained in various tasks throughout their lives. So we cannot really know like whether these animals, they have been trained in a similar kind of tasks in their like past, and we were thinking like, yeah, maybe we can try the same thing with bumblebees, because there are lots of benefits in using bumblebees. We can keep them in the lab. We can control different kind of variables. We can be sure that these bumblebees are completely naive. So we can test the individuals that have never been seen these kind of problem-solving tasks before, or we haven't actually trained them to do anything. So the objective in this study is to determine if insight like problem-solving can be observed in completely untrained and naive bumblebees, so that we can expand our understanding of the cognitive abilities of insects. And you might know this legendary study by Köhler in 30s, where Köhler used chimpanzees in zoo, and they gave like boxes for the chimpanzees in one room, where they were like there was bananas hanging from the roof, and the task was to kind of put these boxes and then pile them on top of each other, and then climb on the boxes, and then the chimpanzee could reach the banana, and they did. So we basically did the same with the bumblebees, but instead of using bananas, we of course used sugar water as a reward. So we kind of pre-trained the bees to find a blue artificial flower again, and that was like there was sugar water on top of that flower. So in 3 bouts, bees found the sugar water on the blue flower. And when they were walking back to the hive on the right from this tunnel, there was one styrofoam ball in that tunnel. So every time when the bee was walking next to the ball, they kind of learned that, okay, the ball is something that they can move easily. And then after those 3 bouts, then we repeated another 3 bouts where this ball was on top of the flower. So the bee went there to search for a sucrose solution, found the ball on top of the flower. So only thing that they needed to do was to just move the ball away on the flower. And after that, we tested the bees. So we now put the flower from the floor to the ceiling of that arena. And the arena was only 3 centimeters high, but it was just high enough that the bee couldn't fly actually. Bumblebees are quite clumsy in flying, so they cannot really fly in that small space. So the bee saw that flower on the ceiling, and the only way to get the reward was to move the ball underneath the flower. Like as you can see from the figure, there are 4 kind of wells or holes on the floor, and only one well just below the flower was the one that the bee needed to move the ball on, and then climb on the ball and then reach the flower. So quite difficult task for the bee, right? So then we had another group of bees that were pre-trained in the same way. So they found the blue flower, and then after that, they immediately were tested with this ball. So they never saw the ball before this testing phase. And here we can see a sample video where the bee is in the arena and starting rolling the ball to the right well, then climbing on the ball and reaching the flower. Let's watch this again. There we go. And then after this, we started thinking like, okay, because we know that bees, they enjoy rolling the balls. There is this other paper that came out a couple of years ago by Samari Kalbayaj et al. Somebody was working in Lars Chitka's lab. They published a paper where they show that bumblebees actually play with the balls. So if you give bumblebees balls, they start rolling them without any reward. So we know that, yeah, bumblebees enjoy rolling the balls, and it might happen almost accidentally if the bee starts rolling the ball into the arena, and then when they're coming closer to the flower becomes bigger in their visual field, and then that's kind of driving them to move the ball underneath the flower, and they might solve the task just by using simple associative mechanisms such as perceptual feedback loop, which means that, yeah, the flower is becoming bigger in their visual field, and they're doing whatever in order to make that flower bigger in their visual field. So in this control group, we pre-trained the bees in a similar manner, did the same stuff with the ball on top of the flower, and after that we tested them, but now we blocked the visual line in sight by adding this plastic wall between the ball and the flower. So now when the bee was actually starting from the ball side, they couldn't see the flower at all. And here we can see an example. Bees on the ball side, starts rolling the ball, goes through the door in that wall, goes back for some reason. The bee is checking the flower again, and then taking the ball back. And rolls it underneath the flower there, and then reads the flower. So in the first group where we pre-trained the bees with the blue flower on the floor and then with the ball, more than 70% of the bees solved the task. In the second group, where they didn't have any pre-information about the ball, only 5% of the individuals tested solved the task. In the perceptual feedback control group, again, more than 70% of the bees that we tested, that was actually 22 individuals, solved the task. So we can conclude that the bees in the perceptual feedback group, they didn't use the simple associative mechanisms in solving the task, but it indicates that they have this eureka moment. They kind of insightfully, spontaneously had this goal in their mind that, aha, I need to roll the ball underneath the flower in order to get the reward. And then what next? We are thinking to do more video analysis to kind of measure the parameters required to compare in comparative cognition. In other animal studies, they have been using like the gaze direction, like in which direction the animal is staring at. Are they staring at towards the reward? Can we say anything about their body movements, like head movements or antenna movements? And we can use like non-invasive methodologies, basically tracking, and we should have like high-speed cameras in order to focus on the antenna movements and body movements in general, in order to find out like in which moment, can we say any specific moment when the bee is actually having this aha moment. And currently we are doing, together with my PhD student Akshay Bambore, this video analysis where we're tracking the ball movements and the bee movements together, like when the bee is moving the ball, so that we can say that whether this movement with the ball, is it goal directed or is it completely random? It could be that if bees are just randomly moving the ball, they might solve the task just by an accident at some point. But based on this video analysis and pilot data, it's not the case. It's more goal directed than random. And also we can check from the side ways, like the bees' body movements, and we see quite often that the bee is actually moving their head towards the flower when they are moving the ball. So actually bees, like let's say 10-15 years ago, we thought that bees don't really move their heads when they're flying, so that they're moving their body. But when we look closer from the videos, we can see that bumblebees, at least, they're moving actually quite a lot their heads. Like, even though the visual field is like more than 200 degrees or something, they still want to kind of stare at the object that they're interested in, so that their head is pointing to that direction where the interesting thing is. So to summarize this insight study, bumblebees can solve a tool use problem spontaneously without prior training, but benefit from pre-information about the ball. And bees can move a ball through a hole in the wall and position it under a flower without seeing the flower when they start rolling the ball. And the tracking data shows that bees move the ball in goal-directed, non-random manner. And the scientific breakthrough here is that even insects with relatively simple nervous system are capable of insightful problem solving. And this challenges the traditional view that complex cognitive abilities are exclusively to animals with larger brains like humans and other vertebrates. And so coming back to the figure that I showed first, we shouldn't maybe think about this kind of or even try to put animals in this pyramid model, but instead seeing other species as an equal, so that every species have their own special abilities. And we can now say that even insects, bees can do lots of same things that used to be considered as human privilege. And when we see humans and other vertebrates and invertebrates more equally, then it kind of makes us to kind of respect other animals more and encourages stronger conservation efforts. What comes to, for example, pollinator decline at the moment, it's very, very big global issue. And I hope that these studies are changing our kind of mindset about invertebrates. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Olli. This is Flemming here. I'm the one taking the questions, and I put my camera on so you can see me. Thanks a lot. Amazing, impressing. I mean, it's really nice, and it's really nice to see the types of experiments that you have done there. There's not so many questions because I think people are just sitting there and we did not know attitude. There's a few questions. One is because did you really sit there and then watch, let's say, 100 hours of video recording, or did you really have some tools? We saw at the end that you had some tools, but did you use artificial intelligence or something like that, or was it really hardcore watching?
Yes, so I kind of respect like the hardcore watching thing, like very traditional old school way. I like to watch the videos by myself. I don't really trust AI that much yet, but like we are trying to combine like machine learning and AI systems and methodologies, but I still want to kind of see everything by myself. For example, this guidance behavior in this block pushing experiment, guidance behavior and the circle dance, those were just like a couple of milliseconds sometimes. Like you cannot really write the code for the AI machine learning algorithm to kind of find those if you don't really know what to look for. So I think that we still need our own like eyes, and we should appreciate like old school, observational data and stuff. So we shouldn't forget that and just letting everything done by AI.
I totally agree with you. One question is also: is it all types of bumblebees, or did you have a favorite one? Or no matter what subspecies of bumblebees we're talking about, could we do the same? Could you make a repeat of your field testing?
Yeah. You can definitely do the same stuff. So we are ordering the Bombus terrestris from Coppert or BioBest, like big companies that are, just because it's so easy. Like for example, here in Oulu, if I call the company that brings bumblebees to Finland for the pollinator purposes in greenhouses, they have big storages in Western Finland. So if I call them and say like, hey, we need like 4 colonies, those will come like next day basically, or in 2 days. Super easy. I think everybody can do the same thing in Denmark for sure. If you order from, you know, Cooperative Biobest, you can, it's like 50-60 euros per colony, and you can even order different sizes. And in this kind of lab experiments, we normally want to use the smallest possible colonies, just because those are fresh and in a good condition, healthy. And we don't really want to test more than 10 to 20 bees per colony, because we want repetition, like we want bees from several colonies. But yeah, Bombus terrestris is easy to maintain in the lab.
Okay, that's the one.
Yeah.
Okay, then we have a very nice question. Somebody's asking here, should we make now I call it a soccer field in the garden with small different balls? I mean, giving them some awards, or will it, I mean, it's really the question is, can we attract bumblebees to the garden by putting up some of your field testing equipment?
Yes, it's definitely it's possible. I have tried that in my own garden, like adding some sugar water, and you can find quite easily, not just adding sugar water, but you need to add a little bit honey, because sugar water doesn't smell anything. So bees cannot find that if you don't add any odors. But if you add a little bit honey, you might get like hundreds of honeybees. Of course, that's a little bit problematic. But if you see bumblebees in your garden, you can attract them by like giving them honey, and then putting like if you want to train them to play football, for example, just put like a platform, a little bit honey, and then you can replace that with the sugar water, and then add balls. And quite fast you can see that they start rolling those balls and having fun with them. And I have actually tried to do that in London when I was working with Chitka. I trained some bees to move the ball into the football pitch to the one goal, and then other group of bees to the other goal. And then when I released all the bees there and put the ball in the center, it didn't work, because all the bees were landing on the ball, and there was like big clump of bees trying to roll the ball, and it didn't really work, but it was fun. And I think BBC was actually filming that and making like a documentary about that.
So do you see anything, I mean, similar honeybees, bumblebees, that actually the same way of this cognitive abilities is also happening in the bee colony? Is it just because we are beekeepers, so we're always interested in this?
Yeah. I mean, for sure, honeybees, lots of these, well, not the ball rolling study, but the string pulling study that I didn't tell about, that we did in Chitka lab, where we showed that bumblebees have culture in a way that they learn to kind of pull strings, like artificial flowers with the strings. They pull them, they observed other bees doing that, and that kind of maintained in a colony this new technique, and it spread through the colony. And I think Chitka et al., they repeated the same thing with honeybees, and honeybees can do the same. I'm quite sure that honeybees can, you know, learn to play football as well. The only problem is that honeybees, keeping the honeybees in the lab, because you have tens of thousands of individuals, it's really difficult to maintain. And every time when we try to kind of attract individual honeybees in our lab, like we made like a small hole through the wall, and then we captured one bee, trained them to come to our lab, and then in 10 minutes, hundreds of bees started coming in. So it's almost impossible to kind of control, because they're dancing, like using the waggle dance and attracting others, and that's why bumblebees are quite easy, I would say, study objects.
So the last question from the audience is do you see any, can they, I mean, from generation to generation, can they kind of transfer abilities that they were learning to the next generation? Do you see anything of that?
Yeah, I mean, with bumblebees at least, it's almost impossible, because only the new queens, they overwinter, and I don't think that they can remember that long time. Like, for example, workers, if we train them to move the ball, and then we have like 3 days break in the training, like long weekend, for example, and then we come back to the lab on Monday and start training them again, we need to go back to the basics. They lose most of the stuff that they learned like before the weekend. So they don't remember long. They learn fast, but the memory is not that good. So I don't think that the queens that are overwintering, they could remember anything. But yeah, we haven't tried that, but like at least in northern hemisphere, like where bumblebees are not like the generations are not overlapping. Maybe in Argentina or somewhere where they might have like several generations overlapping, it might be possible. Or other bee species, not just bumblebees, but like other bee species where they have like several generations overlapping.
Olli, thanks a lot. Always when we're running out of time, suddenly the questions are turning up massively, but we have to go to continue. First of all, thanks a lot. And a little bit of advertisement. Lars Hitchard, he is going to be one of the main speakers at the World Beekeeping Conference in Copenhagen, 23 to 27th of September. I do not know. Will we meet you there, or are you aware of this conference?
Yeah, we'll see. Like September is like super busy what comes to the grant writing and stuff. But I will definitely would like to hear Lars's talk again. Like that, I have been there, and it's always like a pleasure.
Let's meet and drink a few beers. And
yeah,
thanks a lot
nice.
for your efforts. And this morning, extremely exciting talk. So thanks a lot.